CFO in this room. And normally, as a CFO, when any technology is presented to me, I have three questions normally. One is, what is the cost value of this? What is the experience value of this? And what is the platform value of this? Right, so I'm always looking for value out of any technology. But today we are flipping that equation. We are talking about what is the risk and the responsibilities of managing a technology which is as transformative as AI, as they say, was internet or the mobile phone device, or even electricity for that matter, right? And it's important because value and risk are two sides of the same coin. And if you run a business, you know that. You reduce risk, you increase value, right? Any increase in risk reduces value. So you have to make sure that you're managing the risk as well as value together. And for us, Pranay has already introduced the guest to you, so I won't do that. The way we are going to moderate this session is first we are going to have GD, who is our chapter president of Applied AI Association, to share with you what is the goal of Applied AI Association globally and what are we doing as Indian chapter, and how can you be a part of this journey. Between GD and I, we are just running on passion right now and no money. Basically because we are driven by a need, we understand how much of a void applied AI is in India, because we see that other countries are racing ahead of us. And we personally feel obligation to give back and make sure that we can do through our networks and make sure that we can enhance the use, application, advocacy and experience of applied AI for India. And in that context, starting with you, who are basically the future of this country, makes sense. So we'll start with GD, who will share that. And then the way that we're going to moderate the session is that we have three speakers, and of course Riansh, who's a practical student, and of course Gen Z, because you can relate to him. So they are going to share their perspective about what does ethics and responsibility in AI mean, and they bring a different perspective. You'll see the lawyer and policymaker here. You will see someone who's worked in media and applied it. You will see a research scientist. Shruti is a doctor and has written papers, and she's working in the area of ethics, right? And then Riansh obviously is someone who's started a startup in this area. So you get different perspectives, and each of them are going to share 10 minutes of their speech to you. So this is to make sure you get a little bit depth. Otherwise, in panel discussions, we sort of we only do it at top level, so you'll get a little bit flavor of the deep of their particular area. And then the way we are going to run this is each of the guests are going to ask others some questions around their topic. So I'm not going to, I'll try and make sure that we don't run amok, okay, and we stick to time. So I'm certainly going to moderate on your behalf. If someone else has to just do wink to me, and I'll if it's getting too boring, and I'll step in. But basically then we will have each of the panelists ask each other questions so that this becomes like a dialogue, right, for themselves. And then we are going to have a section where we would love to get your questions, your bills, your opinion, whatever it is. And we'll have at least a good 30 or 40 minutes for it. And then we will certainly network. I know we didn't do too much justice to it when we started off, but we will certainly be around for any other questions or anything that you may want from the session. Does that sound good? Yes. Do you want to change anything? No. Okay, good. With that, let me hand over to GD. Sure.
Thank you. A very good evening to all of you. Am I audible? Yes. Good. One thing I love about colleges and students, the energy, right? I don't think anywhere else, maybe we would get it in fish markets, but who goes to fish markets? Anyway, right now everything gets ordered, right? Delivered at your doorstep. Good evening again. It's my pleasure and privilege to be standing in front of all of you and our esteemed speakers today, and some of our guests who have come in all the way just to listen to us and see what we are here for. And I think for any student, the right place to start, just not in AI, but in life, is to start with values. Wouldn't you agree? So that is why we thought when we were going to do this with Masters Union, we thought of ethics as the right place to start, especially for the data science and AI folks who are here. I think that's the right starting point. You first learn the values and then you start building, because there's always a conflict between innovation and regulation. Which one weighs more? I think with the right set of values, we will keep innovating. That is the right way to go about. That's just a segue to what our guests will be speaking. My job is something else. I'm going to be introducing applied AI to you. But before I go to that, I'll introduce myself. Been in the corporate for 32 odd years, and then I took a short sabbatical, which is when I was asked to lead this chapter for India, the applied AI chapter for India. We have about 16 chapters, and we are planning to have more chapters across the globe because AI is all pervasive. This is founded in USA. I hate to go through the slides, and hence I'm giving you the story of how I came here and what is applied AI. Then we'll quickly go through the slides so that we make sure I have not missed anything to deliver to you, right? I think that's acceptable, right? And all of us like stories. That in an evening, on a Saturday, stories should be more interesting, right? So that's how I got into applied AI. My sabbatical turned into establishing the chapter for India. This whole thing was born in the US sometime last year in San Jose. They said, why don't we start this applied AI, because AI is too theoretical. How do I apply what I learned? So that's where the thought came from. The association was born. Sometime in September, they were looking for a person to lead that in India. And you know, when you work in the corporate for donkey's years, you obviously have your connects. And someone asked me, you seem to be doing well when it comes to people and technology. Why don't you take this forward? That's how I got into this. Started the chapter sometime in Jan. And honestly, hand to heart, I had no clue how am I going to establish this, because I'm completely a corporate person. And I'm only used to the business. CFOs like Anita would ask me questions about how are you going to bring in more revenue, how will you manage your margins, how do you keep your customers happy. I'm only used to this rhetoric. Right? So it was very difficult for me to even fathom that I'm going to be establishing a chapter for India. Some of my ardent followers became members. We are a not-for-profit organization. What that means is nobody's funding us. I don't have money. So a good place to start, right? You have nothing. You don't have the experience. So I feel sometimes I'm a startup because I don't have the experience to run associations. I don't have the money to throw and get people to my side. I have nothing basically. All that I have is my experience in technology and my passion for people, passion for purpose. Right? And the purpose is to reach applied AI to as many people as possible, because the mission and vision of applied AI is to educate the uninitiated in the AI zone and bring them as far as possible to AI. And the initiated ones tap on their knowledge and potential and take that back to the uninitiated. So it is basically the job of a bridge, right? I want to connect people. I thought that is something I can do. So that is how we started the journey. Thankfully, a lot of my ardent ex-team members, they saw me on LinkedIn saying, GD, she's going, I call GD by the way. So GD is the chapter president. Immediately they said, okay, GD, we want to work with you, we'll come. Very blessed, I considered myself. All of them are with me. And then we started the chapter really. Today we are about roughly 25 members. We have individuals who are passionate about AI and technology, who want to contribute, who want to learn. They join us. We have students. We do have universities. We have corporates. We have startups. All of them become members. Nobody gets a free ticket, right? You pay and you become a member. What do you get when you become a member? Whole host of things, starting from your network. Today, I think nothing works better than a network, and I'm seeing it in reality. All these years, 32 years, I only catered to my company and my home. I knew nothing else beyond these two. And when I quit my job for a sabbatical, I got into this role, and I'm seeing that the world is so much bigger, and the network works magic. Right? So, and applied AI, you get networked not just within your own group and system, but across the globe. So that is the big takeaway. You also have great people, mentors within the team. Anita herself, and a little bit backstory about Anita and me. When I joined 4th grade in one of the schools in Chennai, I had this girl sitting next to me who would go on to become the CFO of Hindustan Unilever at some point in time, which I did not know then, and that is Anita. Big round of applause. And And she and I were constantly, fighting with each other for the first rank, for the first position, for first that, first this. So after years now, when our paths crossed again, she said, if you're doing AI, I'm seeking to learn more in AI. I said, I want more people like you. Why don't you join? And that's how she came. Some of our friends also joined. Some of our connects, some good town leaders joined us. And now we have a real robust association which is capable of giving much, much more as mentorship too. So it's just our network. It is mentorship from tall leaders. We also have technical people who are deep in technology who are working with us, who are part of Applied AI Association. So we are still in our infancy, and I think at some point, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the line, Applied AI will be one of the biggest associations that you will recognize. And I'm sure Masters Union is going to play a fantastic role in that. I should heartily thank Swati Ganeti first, and then Risha, and of course the team, Mahima and others. I think all of you have been so helpful in putting this up together, and the student project. And that is all I'm going to speak, but just to be sure I haven't missed anything, I want to go through the PPT. Is that okay? Oh, all right. So like I said, why AI? Because we need a community which will shape, which will be a trusted community, all of that. The whys we talked about, we need people to come together. I'm going to just quickly run through this. Our mission is to be it's a global organization. We want to harness the transformative power of AI. We want to bring people together. This is the global team which sits in the US. Nathan is our founder and president. Omar is like my boss, but there's no boss here. This is an association, so he's a global president. And Martha is the head of operations. So I should put my photo also there. What do you think? Yeah, mine and Anita's. Yeah, I think next time we'll do that, Anita. After all, we are the ones who are deciding the fate of how this will run in India. We might as well leverage that. So who all should join? I think today even people who are very humble, modest, domestic housewives, they also need to learn AI. I think it's not sparing anyone, right? So I think this is a very redundant slide. If you ask me, I think everybody needs to know AI. Yeah, the value, exposure, knowledge, responsibility, you learn quite a bit. Is that the background?
That's the 8th floor
Being made, okay. Alright, like I said, 16 chapters, out of which India, Latin America and UK are the chapters outside of US. US has chapters in almost every state, so state or city. Seattle has a chapter, Silicon Valley is a chapter, San Jose is a chapter, so you have multiple chapters, Dallas is another, so you have multiple chapters. The vision is to make it 60 by the end of 26. And why local chapters matter? Because you kind of get everything locally, you always feel good about it, right? So every other talent or the opportunity, everything you get to get the local flavor with the global touch. Global, as we say, we have that. Across technology and industry, AI is advancing, we all know that. So we want to be tapping into whichever technology or whichever industry you want to be in. So we form key committees, industry vertical committees. I mean, you think of the industry and it should be there. If it's not there, we'll form one. As an example, we did not have media, right? You will not, yeah, this telecommunications and media was introduced after we had someone who wanted to experiment AI in media and wanted to join us. So we started that. So we are also flexible to keep adding more industries here. And then these are the technology vertical committees. It cuts across every damn technology that there is. Right, again, another flavor of it. We have a partnership with Mission Impact Academy. That is again like your Coursera. So that is and if someone joins us, they get a further discount with MI, something like some understanding. StackX Days is another important event coming up in US. If you're there in San Diego in the month of October, those dates, you may want to check this out because this is going to be a culmination of a lot of technology minds there. So that will be a good place to be. Participate in the AAIA, I always keep slurring here. AAIA-led committees focusing on best practices, building solutions through partnerships and creating value for all stakeholders. She talked about value, I think that's exactly what we're looking at. Okay, I think that is it. Okay, in India we're doing several events. We just thought we'll show off a little bit. We have a startup event which we call Showcase, where they come and demonstrate their AI products. We have domain-based, Anita is hosting an a panel discussion end of this month, last day, on finance. AI and finance is the series. One of our other members, Renu, in the legal domain, she's going to host. So in each of the domains, we'll have series running about the role of AI in that particular domain. So these are all India-led events. And then in-person meetings, which is what we are doing now. This is one of our favorite events. Global chapters that we're talking about, and what are the chapters planned on the right-hand side. I think this will get too boring. I'm going to stop here and give it around to Anita here. Yeah, thank you so much. Would love to be associated with all of you.
Okay, so thank you, GD. Now we will start with what I said was that each of the panelists will start with what they feel, how they feel about the subject. So can I request Shruti to maybe start with her perspective, also introduce herself, and then a quick introduction to Shruti and then your perspective. And after that, in order to save time, I can just ask Kriti to do that, and then Alok, and then Riyansh, you go.
Did I keep to time?
No, that's you did not.
I didn't.
Please.
But see, nobody tapped their watches.
Hi everyone, am I audible? It's great to be here. Thank you so much, JD ma'am, Anita ma'am, for the opportunity and for leading this chapter. I think it's totally required and needed. And thank you so much to all my fellow panel members. I'm glad I'm going first. Those are tough shoes to fill. And thank you all of you for being here. Saturday afternoon, I mean, you all must really want to learn more about this. And I really appreciate you all being here. I'll introduce myself to begin with, but before we go ahead, I'll do a formal what I'm going to be talking about. I'm Dr. Shruti, and I'll be talking about bias in human-centric AI today. Not a lot, just tip of the iceberg. Before we get started, there's a small riddle for all of you. Some of you might have already read about it, but I'm going to read it out loud. A father and son get in a car crash and are rushed to the hospital. The father dies. The boy is taken to the operating room, and the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy because he's my son. What do you think is happening here? Yeah. Was there anyone who thought about it for 20 seconds before going like, I know the answer? Was anybody confused?
This is from the book Blink, right?
It's a well-cited, yeah. But you would be surprised to know the stats on how many people don't get it. There's an entire research paper talking about this exact riddle. And it says that 82% of Americans fail to guess that the mother could be the surgeon, which just shows how prevalent bias is in humans. Forget about systems. So yeah, now I come back to who I am and why you should listen to me or know why my thoughts might be important. I'm currently a researcher at Sony AI, and I work in the AI ethics team. Before this, I was an AI/ML expert at IBM India, and I worked across different domains. My PhD was on trustworthy facial analysis with scarce and biased data. Sounds heavy, I know. But basically, I was doing face recognition, which most of our phones have, but with a slight twist, where data is limited, so law enforcement set up sketches, how to police catch criminals when you have only a sketch, and also looking at what is biased data doing to facial recognition and analysis systems. So, coming from that, my area of research has broadened a bit. I also look at more human-centric data now. So not just faces, poses, segmentation, anything which has a human in the picture is what I will be looking at. I have 30 plus publications. You can look up my Google Scholar and drop me a message if anyone's really interested in chatting anything about it. I have been fortunate to meet some amazing people at different events and awards I've been getting. And beyond work, well, I like all things food. I cannot survive without caffeine. I think PhD did that to me. So be it chai, coffee, I just need that. And now he's Coke Zero Health. I love sunsets, I love traveling. More recently, I've been exploring fitness as a side thing, and I also took part in the Kettlebell Nationals last year. This is my very long but relevant publication list. Whenever you get some time, and if I'm able to ignite some interest on this topic to even one person in the room, please feel free to drop me a message. I would be happy to chat with you. Okay, so AI in real world. How many of you know what AI is? Dumb question, I know, but still. Just show of hands. Pretty much everyone, right? How many of you know what AI ethics is? Or bias? Fewer people, but still pretty good. Okay, so if you look at this image, this is just some prompts I gave to one of the commonly used models to generate images. And this is while I was just doing some random analysis for, like sometimes you open WhatsApp and you, Meta, can you do this? Meta, can you do that? This is not Meta, but the first prompt was 10 runners at a marathon. And these are different models. That's the first image I got. And that's the second image I got. Can anybody in the room point out what might be the challenges here? Yeah, go for it.
All white men.
Exactly, exactly. And I think somebody also, one of my friends also pointed out, in the first images you will notice, most of them are on the same foot. Does that seem something which you would probably not see in real life? Yeah, go for it.
Neither of the images have 10 runners.
Yeah, exactly. That's something we evaluate called faithfulness. So apart from bias, it's also not exactly following your instructions. So it doesn't have 10 runners. It doesn't have diversity, be it in terms of skin tone or gender groups. And something like all of them are also on the same line. Yes.
I think on this image, people's feet are not on the ground for some of them.
Yeah, I
They're
think
in
for
the
all
air.
of them. Yeah. So, yeah, we think we're very, like, AI is as good as it can, but we have a lot of work to do. So, future, all of you. The second image is slightly different. A student in a prestigious university. Anybody wants to tell me? Yes.
It's a boy.
Yes. And? Yeah. So bias doesn't go one way, right? It's not just about getting images of white men or white women. It can also be the other way, where you have only dark-skinned people in the image. And this is me testing the same system, and I gave it like 4 or 5 times the same exact prompt, and I got a dark-skinned person. So it's not different systems. So, yes. Some more very interesting stories. I won't go into all of them. I'm sure you've read some in the news, some on Reddit, some on different social media applications. But the first image is basically something that happened way back in 2020. It was Twitter's cropping algorithm. Nobody really thought of it. When you put a vertical image, what was the algorithm doing? It was, irrespective of the positioning, it was picking up the light-skinned version person and cropping to that. So irrespective of where Barack Obama is placed in the image, the cropping algorithm would pick up the light-skinned person. Doesn't seem that important, but well, that is what representation is. And that's what you're seeing day to day. Another interesting case was the legal cases. We all use ChatGPT. We do it to do our assignments, to do research. I use it for brainstorming a lot of times. One fine lawyer was using it to do his research. And the person went back and started citing all these cases. None of them existed. So these are hallucinations, what you might have popularly heard of. So there are real challenges, and that is the reason why ethics is as important as working in AI. Okay. I talking about bias in human-centric AI, but what really is human-centric AI? Is AI for humans? Yes. Anything which has a human in the context of be it a text or an image is human-centric AI. What people forget is it's AI for humans and AI about humans. So it's also what we are doing and like not just in the images but also the value system which Didi ma'am was mentioning. So it's important to not only look at it singularly. And coming back to bias, my favorite topic. It basically refers to any sort of performance disparity. We'll keep it simple, no long definitions. So to keep it short, bias is really just the problem. So whenever somebody says bias, what should come in your brain is problem. So performance disparity is the problem. So anyone, what is then fairness?
No performance disparity.
Yes, of course. That's a good one to start with. Anybody else? Yes.
I think just being honest, if I'm wrong somewhere, then I should be wrong. I have to prompt my chat GPT to say that, listen, I am not 100 times correct. I am also maybe 99% of the times wrong, so I need to prompt it out.
Yes.
Otherwise, it just keeps agreeing, oh, you're great.
That
Oh,
is
you're
true.
amazing.
Yes.
Yes, you're doing so good.
Yes.
But I have to prompt it out now.
Yes, of course.
Right, so I believe that the team who's building the AI, they should be a set of people who are diverse, right?
I
They
agree.
should be people who are different genders. They should be of diverse, I think, caste, religion, whatnot. I think that can bring a good perspective.
Of course, that is very important and we will come back to it. But to keep it super simple, fairness is really just the goal. So it's the outcome. When bias is the problem, what we want is the outcome to be fair, and that is really just fairness, the goal, right? Does everyone agree anymore? Yes, so coming to fairness is the goal. In order to achieve fairness, the very basic thing, and this is where my current research area is, we must be able to evaluate and identify bias. That's really the step 0, right? Like if we don't know there is a problem, how do we go and fix it? So, now that we've established that, we know fairness evaluations are essential and hard, but why are they hard? Any inputs?
Subjective.
Fair, yes. Any other? Yeah.
Less data.
Exactly.
AI works on probability. So it really just transforms a pattern that when does the person who's giving the input is the most happy. So he will just keep on prompting that you are amazing and like that. So that will be.
Yes, I agree. Excellent answers from everyone. Yes.
The data set that might be used to check might be skewed. Or
Yes.
like that might be biased as well.
Yes. Excellent answers. And I will follow it up with that. Even widely used or accepted data sets just lack that information. I cannot go to the point to say they are skewed. They are skewed. That is the second problem. But the first problem is we don't have that information to do that evaluation. If we have data of 1 billion images, the amount of labeled data may be just 1,000 images, which is pretty less, right? You can't, somebody talked about problem. Yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes,
I'm a very layman user of
yes, yes.
AI. I give a prompt, I get the answer. I would not know for anything, okay, this is biased because I'm getting the outcome, which is fairness to me.
Yes.
I'm not getting that. I would just keep a mail prompting with the specific accurate details. So how will that? I'm not able to relate with it.
I think what I would answer here is awareness is step 0, not step 1. So awareness is step 0. Awareness and educating yourself on what bias is, what fairness is really just something. If you don't know that in different contexts, and what I'm talking about here is images, it does not apply directly to large language models like ChatGPT. It may not apply to generating images as is. So AI has so many applications. So it's really just about trying to learn more. We all learn about AI. Why not learn also about fairness and bias in AI? So it's the step 0 would be learning more about it and becoming more aware. As soon as you do that, you will be a better judge of what is happening. And I think you've already taken step 0 by being here. So following up, this is really just the only technical slide I have, which is also not very technical, I hope. The challenges to achieving fairness, which we've been researching and studying and going back and forth on and trying to advocate for about a year now, is that there are gaps in data sets. For most applications, we do not have these labels. How do I go and identify bias or fairness if I don't have the data or the tools to do that? The second is, okay, people say, why not use AI to do that? You can just use an AI model to label the data as well, right? People have been doing that. We have those labels, but they are highly unreliable. We did this study on a common data set, and we went back and did manual checks on these automated labels that were there. We observed that a lot of them could not, like in a lot of images, it's not here, but it was a pose estimation data set. So if I'm here, I don't think anybody in the room can tell my skin tone, can they? But these AI models were predicting skin tones for these images, which is just unreliable. And if not that, they're just incorrect. And the third thing is, it's not so easy to make conclusions. It's real, like you all have been working in something or like have some idea about data science. Your results and numbers are very dependent on the data set that you use, right? So something more technical, cross-validation will always be helpful. Test on multiple data sets to report results, not just on one set and say, oh my God, yes, my model is working. Do thorough analysis, which we haven't been able to do again because no data. We've established this, I think everybody's been working in AI, looking at AI, using AI, ChatGPT. My mom uses it these days, you know, right? She uses it to do analysis of financial markets. Yesterday she was asking the model, what do you think about XYZ share? Can you also show me the history for it? So she's also got on the train to do it. My dad uses it for gardening tips. So very diverse use cases. But we come back to the marathon runners. I again did some analysis. Again asked 5 runners at a marathon. Thought maybe it does better when there are more number of people in the image. 20 runners at a marathon. Still no women, still no dark-skinned people, still no people from different ancestries. It's not just about dark skin, right? Do you see an Asian person? Do you see an Indian person? Nothing. And do you notice the legs? That's something that's just not leaving my head, guys. This is a fun thing which I was doing. We were just talking about it. This is my family and that's my grandmother's birthday we were celebrating. So I recently lost, it's been a year, I lost my grandfather. So we've been picking up old images and using AI to kind of just see the imagine feature on how it does. And that's just a fun thing we look at. Now, we just use this image as an input. And I want you to look at this video clearly. We're going to talk about it. It's just a 7-second clip. And if you want, I can replay it. I think you all should also see this. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I think they can catch it here.
I can catch it here, yes.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Yeah.
Okay. I would request you to also see
It's
this.
good.
Yeah.
Do you see what just happened? I will replay it again.
It's
Did you see what just happened? Yes. Can someone wasn't the only case. I took more images. I took random images from the internet. And for some reason, this model thinks old people cannot cut cakes. It turns them into 6-year-old or 10-year-old, I don't know, but young children. And that's just something which is not very, very realistic, right? And that's something we should question. We should be like,
I think you should play it again so we
Okay.
see it properly.
yes, again.
Whoa.
And I mean, it happened, it's not just one image. I tried it with a couple, which I was very curious, and I'm a researcher, so I don't stop at all. Okay, we will move on. AI is everywhere, but is it really representing everyone? That is the question to ask. And I think that is something you should take away with you today. Beyond pronouns, skin tones, age, there is something I also like to talk about, which is cultural appropriation. There are different things which people have been working on, like pronouns, skin tones, age, but culture, not really. Riyansh mentioned something about people and diverse teams. I will tell you a very small example, and that's the last part. Oh ma'am. So I was working in my team, and we were doing this data set evaluation, evaluation I was talking about. We were manually looking at images to make sure the annotations are correct. A couple of images came from India, of women. Something which we commonly see as the bindi. That for us is makeup, right? It's not a common thing. And we saw it. I saw it. According to me, it was makeup. I marked it as makeup. We go back to the team meeting. According to my teammates, that was a tattoo or a mark. So that's just culture. They wouldn't know. I don't blame them. But that's why diversity is also important in the room where AI is being built or talked about or ideated. Coming to what can you do? I know it was more about me, but ma'am asked what are you passionate about? You should include that. What I'm most passionate about is advocating the need for AI ethics, and I will quickly run through it. So I think awareness, like we talked about, guidelines and checklists when you're deploying systems, creating AI, evaluating on diverse sets, reporting on diverse sets and subgroups. Do not be afraid to ask the right questions. I went back to my team meeting with senior leaders and said, that's not a tattoo, that is bindi. So just ask questions, do not be afraid. This is one slide. If you want to take a screenshot of, you should. Make sure you use it in your day-to-day, while building projects, while doing any kind of AI work. Ask these questions. This is like a cheat sheet of how you can make sure you are a part of the cycle of AI ethics and take equal responsibility, if not more, in terms of how we can make AI more fair and more ethical. Ask these questions. Does your system promote inequality? Does it breach privacy at any point? Can it be used negatively? Is the data safe? Is your system inclusive? And can you interpret the system's decision? To end, I don't think fairness is a one-time fix. It's not like I can fix it now and everything works. It's a continuous cycle of design, evaluation, and monitoring. Thank you.
You give the stage to a doctor, she's going to give full utilization. But thank you very much, Dr. Shruti. You did a great job piquing the curiosity of everyone and sharing, how this is really staring us in the face. But my request to the other panelists is we have half an hour now, so that we can give at least half an hour to the students in order to ask their questions, because I'm sure they have a lot of them. So if you can stick to your 10 minutes timeline.
You have your
Yeah.
need help?
I should be fine, hopefully. If
you open Google Chrome.
So this one, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all.
See, that's what you get when you've got a doctor in the room, right? That was, to my mind, that was quite a complex presentation. So much for her saying she's got different sorts of shoes to fill than others. Here's what you get when you have a lawyer and a policy person in the room, right? Super ultra basic. That's what you're going to get here. There are no pictures, no images, no fun research pieces, which, dang, I feel like I should have done now when I think about it. But thank you so much for all of y'all taking out the time on a Saturday evening. I can see that we are the only ones between you and your fun Saturday evening plans, which I would imagine are anything from partying to chilling to napping to, I hope not studying, but some version of it. So thank you for taking the time and being here. My name's Kriti. I am a technology lawyer and a public policy professional. I've worked in this space for a little over a decade, which means over the past decade, I've worked on emerging technology public policy issues around the world. The first question I ever had to answer was, can a call like a Skype call interconnect with your regular phone number, a landline number or a mobile number directly in India? Is that allowed? You know the answer to that is? The answer was no. That's why when Skype started mobile calling in India at some point, it actively said you have to have a Skype connection and only then can you call someone within the ecosystem of Skype. Everywhere else in the world, you're allowed to use Skype and make a phone call to a direct phone number, but not really in India. I also had the fun job of answering the question on whether Pokemon Go could place Pokemon in religious monuments or historical monuments. Do you know what the answer to that is? Apparently also no. There are challenges associated with it. I also had the fun job of answering questions like, if I'm not an HDFC, SBI, Yes Bank, so on and so forth, can I still create payment products? Something that gave rise to things like Paytm and Google Pay eventually. So this has broadly been my history, and so my current day is all about emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. And the one thing I'm passionate about is ethical access to artificial intelligence. So here's what we're going to do today. This is the only GIF/GIF you're going to see on my deck, by the way. We're going to talk a little bit about what the fundamentals of AI ethics really are. We'll talk about a few examples in this space. We'll workshop some case studies that have happened in real world and see if you've got answers that are different from the answers that different organizations, different countries, different businesses, different individual human beings had at different points in time. And so we're taking a little bit of a step back from all the fun stuff that Shruti shared with us a little while ago. We're going back to the basics, we're going back to the fundamentals. Welcome to a non-technologist person on your panel here. Before we start, can I ask you to take a quick look at your screen and look at the two poll questions? We'll start with the first one. Would you entrust an artificially intelligent technology or just a plain and simple robot to make hiring decisions for you? Show of hands, yes. Alrighty. Show of hands, no. Alright. Show of hands, maybe. Brilliant. Now, I have no intention of putting anyone in the spot, but the folks who said yes, does anybody want to volunteer an answer on why you would trust the technology? Go for it.
Why not for a tech role? Because everything that happens in a tech hiring is like almost 90% that can be done on a machine. So an AI could make the right decision.
Very interesting. The folks who said no, can someone volunteer an answer? Go for it.
Based on Shruti ma'am's presentation, we got to know that there's a lot of bias. So you can't really have bias.
It's a very valid. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's a very valid thing to consider. And then for the folks who said maybe, can someone volunteer an answer? Yep.
Not now, but surely in future.
All right. What things work in your favor and like work for AI, and what things don't work for AI in your mind? You don't have to answer if you don't have it. That's totally fine. Go for it.
I believe some things can be automated. We are talking about AI. Some technical stuff, like I said, right? And already there are startups doing that, I guess. And but I think not the entire process.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you need to judge the individual as well, right?
Mhm.
And it's the place where we need individuals judging the person, right? So like for example, you are shortlisting a lot of CVs, right? There are a lot of CVs in a board, so you can't just look into every one of them. You need to, push filter होना चाहिए उनके बीच, right? So maybe it can help to, reduce the tasks, but not in time.
Brilliant. So the one thing you should know is I'm giving you no answers today. My job here is to make you question everything. And so if you get out of this conversation with more questions than answers, I will have done my job. So I'm not telling you what is right or wrong, because that's the fun part of ethics, right? Everything's great. There are no rights and wrong answers. And so to every question that you hear today during this presentation, there are no right answers, there are no wrong answers, there aren't any good answers, there aren't any bad answers. There are just questions that help us think more, critically evaluate situations, and hopefully trudge the path towards an answer at some point or the other. What about loan dispersal decisions? You want to buy a car, you want to study further, so you need an education loan, you want to buy a house. For whatever reasons you need a loan, would you trust an AI to make that decision for you? Show of hands, yes.
For the bank or for the person? Bank.
Well, the person is getting a decision based on an AI making that decision. So where's the yes? All right, where's the no? All right, and where's the maybe? A lot more people trusting AI with their money than with their futures. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. So
Actually, you should ask whether they will allow AI to spend the money that day. Maybe then you will get a lot more no's than yes.
I am sure anything that makes people have somebody else spend their money, whether corporeal form or not, is probably going to be a no. But let's quickly go back again to the basics of what really is AI. Folks who've watched the movie Three Idiots know that there is a complicated definition of the term machine. This is the Ranchor Das version of the definition of the term AI. AI essentially is anything that mimics human intelligence. There are a few key components of it, which you see reflected in regulations around the world. Those are the complicated versions of the definition, but there are some key components. There's prediction, there is recommendation, there's decision, there's decisions made like a human being would, and essentially, therefore, AI is anything that mimics human intelligence. And there are 5 key ethical principles of AI. The first one is what Shruti talked about in detail, and we've covered quite extensively. That's fairness. The other 4 are transparency, privacy, accountability, and safety. All of them equally important. Now, because we've already done fairness, I'm going to skip over this one. So we're going to go into transparency instead. After fairness, which is not having a discriminatory decision-making process, the next key ethical principle for all things AI is transparency, which is to know how decisions are made. If there is an AI tool that is making a decision whether on your loan disbursement or your job situation, or even just giving you an answer on here's the source to the statement that you wanted and here's where it was cited, the AI tool has to be able to explain that to you. There has to be transparency associated with it. So you have to be able to know what decision the AI tool made and why it specifically arrived at that decision. And it's essentially a trust building exercise. For example, if your loan application gets rejected, your loan officer will always come and tell you, hey, there are these 5 parameters on the basis of which we give you loans. We're not going to be able to give you a loan because either you didn't have a collateral or you didn't fill in all the forms or your documentation was missing, and so you have the ability to correct whatever was missing or whatever was different. You have the ability to cognitively understand why your loan application was denied. Now imagine an AI system that just comes and tells you, hey, no loan for you, bye-bye. That's not helpful, because how do you go about correcting something you have no visibility into? And that's why the second ethical principle really is transparency. The third one is privacy, which is, again, super important. Now let's imagine I go into my whatever language model I'm using. And I go in and say, hey, my name's Kriti. My blood group, hypothetically, is B positive. Can you tell me what kind of food I should eat? I have no idea, by the way, if blood group and food nutrition has anything to do with each other, but let's, for the sake of this conversation, assume it does. And I ask it this question, and it tells me, you know what, you should eat green leafy vegetables, so on and so forth. Now let's assume there's somebody else who's using their technology and asking it the question, what's the most prominent blood group in my geographical location? And it says, I think it's B positive. By the way, Kriti Trehan is one of those people. Why? Because it's ingested this information, it's become part of its training data. My personal information has not been anonymized for any reason whatsoever in the backend system. And so now my personal medical information has been shared with an unknown person and is at risk of being shared with multiple unknown people. That goes against the ethical principle of privacy. So my name, my physical location, my behavioral patterns, what content I like to watch at what time of day, what products I like to buy, and why do I choose them in a certain order, how many times do I reorder. All of these are my behavior patterns. Where do I catch my cab from? Where do I get off of that cab? Do I do that every single day? Do I do it only on the weekends? Do I do it only on weekdays? All of these are behavioral patterns and my personal information that needs to be kept private. And just because data is available in publicly available data sets doesn't mean it's ethical really to use it. Your AI system is only as good as the training data that is fed into it, because that's the basis on which the AI system makes decisions, right? Now, if the provenance of that data is not known, if its antecedents are unknown, then essentially it could have enough of privacy infringing information on the basis of which it's making decisions that it could be problematic from that standpoint. Accountability is the funnest ethical principle from my perspective. The reason it's the funnest is because it literally means जब कुछ गड़बड़ होगी तो हम किसकी गर्दन पकड़ने वाले हैं? Who is responsible for things when they go awry? Is it the developer? Is it the person who built the data sets? Is it the person who used the service to come up with a decision ultimately? So let's go back to the credit example. Who's responsible for you being denied a loan? The bank that used the service? The company that built the service? The individual developer or the team that constituted the basics of the parameters on the basis of which you were denied the loan. Who's responsible? I promised you there were going to be no answers, and this is one of the biggest questions to which there is no answer at this point in time. Interestingly, the European Union, which is one of the first regions to have thought of legislating on this topic, has come up with the EU AI Act, which is a pretty robust law. It's quite detailed. It tells you what the principles of AI should be, what are the ethics associated with AI, what are the kind of compliance mechanisms companies need to put in place. But there's one element that they have not been able to come to a decision on, which is who's liable when things go wrong. So Europe also has something called the Product Liability Directive, which is a law that has existed for a very long time, and that law generally allocates responsibility and liability in the technology sector. Typically speaking, if you sit in a car and the car breaks down, then if it was a manufacturing defect, the manufacturer is responsible. If the driver was driving rationally, the driver is responsible. If the driver was doing a good job and there were no glitches in the manufacturing of the product, then whatever external exigent circumstances existed, that is the problem. That's how you allocate liability. The Product Liability Directive has been sought to be amended for a very long time now to cover the AI lens as well. And guess what? They haven't been able to do it as yet. So what happens if a faulty facial recognition system is used by law enforcement and makes a law wrong for the rest? Who's responsible? The cops or the folks that made the technology in the first place? The final ethical principle is safety. And safety is really interesting, right? Because safety has everything to do with harm. The AI tool that is created, does that cause harm in the first place or not? That harm could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be financial. Do you get a loan or not? Do you get a job or not? Is the AI tool giving you validation in response to a question that is morally and ethically gray in the first place? All of these are different forms of harm that could exist. Let's say you were building a self-drive car. Bless you. Let's say you were building a self-drive car. And that car is buggy for some reason. You've not tested it well enough. And so it goes and hits someone, or it hits something, and as a result of it, you get hurt. In that sense, an unsafe AI tool is not just an inconvenient existence, it's also inherently dangerous. And I know we're at time, so I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to leave you to think about a few of these dilemmas. How many of you know about the philosophical trolley problem? Yeah? So the philosophical trolley problem is, you're standing in a trolley, one way you go, you have to necessarily hit one person, other way you go, you have to necessarily hit 6 people. Which way do you go? And then there are variations of it. The one person is a child, the 6 people are old people. The one person is going to cure cancer tomorrow, the 6 people are convicts. There's multiple variations of it. Now imagine you've got to teach your artificial intelligence technology the trolley problem. And the AI technology now has to make a decision on who do you hit. How? This is a question human beings can't answer in the same way in every single circumstance. How are you going to train an artificially intelligent technology to answer that question? Because I heard someone say this, AI is all about probability, right? It's all about how likely is a certain result likely to be achieved. And so does that mean the AI will assume that going in one direction or the other is a given? There is no third alternative? Because also the AI is only as strong as the training data it gets, but also the AI is only as good as the prompts it gets. It can only answer the question it is asked. It can't answer the question it's not been asked. So how do we go about, how do you do that? If you're building a self-driving car, how are you going to answer that question? We were talking about skin tones. You built a facial recognition technology which has a time sensitivity attached to it, does a fantastic job on light skin tones, terrible with dark skin tones. But the people you were building it for are very keen to launch it, because if they don't launch it, they're going to lose X amount of money, which is going to cause a crash for the shareholders. How are you going to tackle that situation? From an ethical standpoint, the answer seems to be really clear, but from a reality-based decision-making perspective in the real world, how are you going to answer that question? I'm over time, so I'm going to actually stop here.
Good job.
And you can feel free to ask me questions later on. That's me. I'm going to wrap up with, there was a really cool statement that Uncle Ben has been famously misquoted as having said, but he's the one who made it famous, Uncle Ben of the Spider-Man fame. With great power comes great responsibility. And that's really where all the power
I think
is
you
at
should
this
go to
point
the
in time.
previous slide.
That's really where all the power is at this point in time, right? Folks who are creating AI, but also folks who are using AI, right? We're making life-changing decisions, day-to-day decisions, our everyday existence relies in some way, shape, or form on AI. I don't mean the usage of large language models alone, but every single online technology you use that predicts, recommends, or decides is powered by artificial intelligence. And so there is great power, and here's the great responsibility. So do well with it. Thank you.
Hello.
You
have a PPT or something? You want to show something?
Yeah, I have a couple of slides.
I'm going to let you.
You guys have essentially covered everything that I wanted to say. You should find my slides.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be reiterated.
Do not even have a presentation.
I don't know where.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start with an honest confession. I wasn't going to bring any slides. Then Shruti started by saying, how do I present my slides? So I felt pressure. So I started. And I'm also mindful of the fact that Anita is going to measure value per minute spent.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to keep it short. Okay, so I represent a company called AI4India, which some of us founded. It's a voluntary organization where we are working on building an enabling ecosystem for AI in India. And our focus is India. So our mission is to make AI work for all Indians. Not just this vague notion of AI which is going on, but how does it help all Indians, especially people at the lower level. And to make this mission possible, we have to keep in mind India's diversity. Unlike any other country in the world, we have the maximum cultures, languages, different ways of living, religions, etc. So how do we take care of all that? And secondly, how do we make it accessible to everyone? AI tools are currently, access is limited by language, by devices, by cost, by interface. Most of it is text-driven, still text-driven, while there are some audio interfaces and so on coming in, but how do you make sure that the common man who is not able to input text or read text easily is also able to use AI? How do we make it low cost? Most of AI is very, very expensive to build, and people are putting in more and more money. And finally, how do we rapidly diffuse, make it available to maximum number of people over a period of time? Now, to do that, one of the things, and this is my last chart, and hopefully we'll go through this ladder. When we talk about ethics and responsibility, I look at the question of trust. How do you trust AI? So while there are lots of use cases, and I'm sure everyone is using AI regularly every day, but it's not one single AI. AI is not one single entity. It is built on a lot of components, and it's important to understand what these components are and where the issue of lack of trust or all the issues, technical issues and the legal issues highlighted earlier, they serve as a good starting point. It starts from the compute layer. So any AI system needs large amounts of compute, which is why NVIDIA kind of company is such a large company now. But there are other companies which have their hardware as well. Not all hardware works similarly. Even if you have a GPU or an equivalent like a TPU, AMD has their chips, etc. The way they process information and how much memory they offer in processing information starts affecting the way that information is transformed into a model, right? So therefore your issue starts there. The most crucial layer is data. Where are you sourcing your data from? Is that data fully representative to overcome some of the biases we talked about and so on? For example, most of AI solutions are built on information from the internet. Internet is biased towards the West and towards the English language. 90% of all information on the internet comes from the West. India has a representation less than 5% on the internet. When we start breaking it down by languages like Hindi, Swahili, Tamil, will be much lower, etc. So when you start interacting with these tools, not in English, but in Hindi, then you start doing it in Telugu, Tamil, etc., you will find their output becoming more and more garbled. It's very difficult to work with it because not enough data has been used for training. That's one aspect. Secondly, where are you sourcing this data from, as in the credibility of the source. So bulk of this information right now is from Wikipedia. And Wikipedia information cannot be 100% trusted because Wikipedia information is all crowdsourced, and over a period of time, certain groups around the world have managed to have larger control over what goes on Wikipedia. So not everything can be taken as fact. Secondly, the interesting thing, so you see everybody who is launching AI models will start evaluating them on definitive parameters, PhD level math, right? That's how they will do. But how about PhD level sociology or history, literature? These are subjective issues. History as it is because it's history, none of us were there, is very perception driven. History is basically as reflected by a historian, right? If there are two sides to a history, depending on which side the historian came from, there is a bias, right? Now, how does the AI system figure that out? Secondly, even in sciences, so while mathematics, etc., there is the English version, but there is the Indian version, basic mathematics and so on. That doesn't get reflected. About Indian history, a lot of Indian history is written in our classical languages, Sanskrit, Tamil, etc. AI systems will read the English interpretation written by somebody else, right? So therefore, your final output is going to get corrupted. Then how do you label this? Shruti spoke about that. So labeling of the data becomes extremely important, and especially when it is subjective data, it becomes even more difficult to, simple problem. Dog has 4 legs. What if there is a 5-legged dog? How will an AI system, now how do you label it? You will still label it as a dog. Unless somebody has taken care to say 5-legged dog, or you have an image where one leg is hidden because of the way the picture was shot. Unless it is captured, that labeling is wrong, and therefore it will identify it as a false something else, not identify it as a dog. So the data labeling or data enrichment layer, as we call it, becomes the next important issue for building trust into the system. Then the model itself. Now all models, LLM driven models, first of all, they are driven on the transformers model, and that has an inherent problem. It will never be 100% accurate. It will have, by ranging, so it starts from 80% and then over a period of time people have been working, but nobody can claim more than 90-95% accuracy of this. Now, today when you are running a query, it's not running the model only once. The reasoning models with their chain of thought are running it over and over again, right? So one response you are getting could have prompted or run the transformer 5 or 6 times. And you do 95% into 6 and you're suddenly down to 60% accuracy, right? So over a period of time, through this chain, your accuracy could actually be going down. So how do we make these models more and more effective to build that eventual trust? Then come on top of that the developer framework, where you're extracting APIs to build agents, models on top of these models for our regular use. Usually people will put in specific data, so it could be industry data, it could be specific company data or personal data, some of which we spoke about earlier. So how do you protect that data to ensure if I offer my data, then the results from that inference should be available only to me or to the people I provide access, but not to everybody, right? So what are the guardrails there and so on. And sometimes these guardrails become a problem. So about a year and a half back, Google Gemini launched an image model. They put in such strong guardrails that started producing black Nazis, right? So that became a problem. So you can't over guardrail these things also. There has to be a constant balance that we put in. Finally, users. Now, when we look at users, there are going to be enterprise users and there are us as individual users. We also have a responsibility because whatever you eventually churn out of AI eventually goes back into AI because we'll publish it somewhere or it goes into something and goes back into retraining models. Now, when you use a chat GPT or Gemini, any of those models, the output you're generating directly does not go into retraining the model, right? But on Grok, every single Twitter feed or X feed goes back into training the Grok almost real time. Because that's how they are constructed, right? So that it can give you real time this thing. So anything that we are writing there, whether it is false news or whatever, is going back and training and infecting the data and therefore the model all the time. And therefore there have to be strong ways of ensuring that we continue to build that trust. So my final summation of all this is going to be, when we look at AI and say, okay, AI has issues, don't just look at AI has issues, but where in the entire stack could those issues have crept in? And therefore, how do we correct that bit so that the next layer can trust the previous layer and overall, eventually, the final model will be good. Thank you.
So let's keep the best for the last. So we have Reyansh to represent his perspective, because I think personally that all of you actually represent the real digital natives, and maybe let's get that point of view.
Alright, so to begin with, I did not have a presentation. I was not told to, so I'm not going to stand. I'm going to sit and talk to you guys. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And most of the things that I wanted to talk about already has been covered by our panelists. Again, abhi main soch raha hu kya bolu. Take it. So before we actually start, I want to do a small activity with everyone over here. So आपके पास we all have mobile phones here. Can we get a raise of hands? Yeah. Who all have iPhones? I'm slightly biased towards iPhones, so yeah. Anyone? Ayush. Can you quickly open your phone? Can you find the clock app? खोल लिया? Show it to me. 9 minute का timer लगा दे please. Thank you. So, my perspective on ethics on AI is that we're in a very similar situation to what Oppenheimer was. Do we all know what Oppenheimer is? Yeah. So AI right now is at a stage where there are only two choices. Either we prosper, we take AI into awesome things, we build products out of it that's going to benefit the society, or it's complete doomsday. AI is in the wrong hands, AI is not benefiting anyone, and it's just there, all right, and we live in fear, locked in. So, according to me, all of us, मेरा perspective है कि I'm one of the youth, and similar to you guys, we're actually currently building AI, building the road for AI while walking on it. So it's in our hands to actually, create the future of AI, so that हमारे बच्चे भी आगे उस पे चले. That's number one. Again, I am not a pro on ethics on AI. I was listening to a couple of podcasts before coming over here. Okay. There are three things that I understood from what the panelists told me. Three things. That if we ever build into AI, these are the three ethics that we should actually keep in mind. Number one, AI is not there to erase human efforts, it's there to augment it and help people. Am I right? Yeah. Number two, like so rightly said, whatever data is being created by the people, the consumers, the IP that has been created by them should be only used by them and people who they are okay with sharing. Okay. Number three, which is my favorite, and like Dr. Shruti said, transparency is very important. Currently, the people who develop AI, they themselves do not know what actually happens and how the decision making happens. Because end of the day, AI is a black box. We feed it information and we get outputs from it. But it's still kind of blurry. Ki kya ho kya raha exactly? Because AI is completely quantitative. It's zeros and ones. Memotag. Memotag ke baare mein I'm going to give you a brief about what Memotag is. It's an AI agent that we're building to track cognitive health of elderly patients using speech biomarkers. There are three core pillars of Memotag itself. Number one is fluency. We want to make sure that our AI model is very fluent in nature. They can speak to patients like on a normal phone call or a video call. We have ample data sets for that. Cool. Number two is dynamicism. So I want to make sure that whatever goes into Memotag, it eventually adapts to the patient itself and personalizes it over with the patient. Cool. Number three, which is again something that even the big AI companies like Anthropic and Claude to Anthropic ka hi part and OpenAI are still working on, which is building empathy with AI, adding qualitativeness to AI itself. So I had a question for all the panelists here. How do you think eventually we can build qualitativeness, not quantitativeness, into AI? We'll take that up later. And I would just honestly want anyone else to ask me a question here, because I am not sure aage kya bolna chahiye, but I have a couple of things actually. So Gatha, are you there? Yeah. Yes. Gatha asked a question about Shruti ma'am, right?
Yeah.
Right. My take on that is hiring wala question tha na?
Maybe it was like, how is it relatable
Yes.
to us normal people?
Maybe for people like us who use ChatGPT for writing emails, that's okay, utna bias nahi aata. But people, let's say, who are getting hired, okay, there's a lot of bias there because, let's say, end of the day, AI is a collection of metadata, right? It's been trained on data. And agar wo data set hi itna fudged hai, jahan pe male dominance is there and people who are, let's say, very good in technicalities are usually male. So fir, end of the day, AI is gonna take that small amount and amplify it 1000x and give that output to everyone. That's number one. And secondly, like ma'am said, about you letting AI handle your finances and giving out loans. I have a take on that, which is, let's say the AI has been trained on credit scores of a lot of people, and we see that that small data set, male or some group is performing much better. It's gonna give preference to that, right? So yeah, we cannot honestly rely AI to do all the things. I honestly feel that AI is there to help us, but not to replace us completely. Cool. Do we have any questions for you?
We'll come to that. I think if you're done, let Anita take over.
Perfect. We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I hope all the four perspectives has piqued your interest enough that you have some questions that you want to ask the panelists. Whoever wants to volunteer. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right.
So I have
Just raise your voice so that everyone can.
So I have a question for the entire panel. Now I, a month back, decided to start in AI. I don't come from a tech background. When you were showing the pictures of the runners and everything, I was like, why is there not a woman? Same goes with tech. There are not many female founders and entrepreneurs in tech. So I wanted to become that, and my dad was very interested in getting me into AI, though I was not interested. Now that I realize that I can't really live without it, I was like, okay, I'll go forward with it. I want to automate sales. That was my vision, because I am a salesperson and I know just the amount of effort it takes in sales. I know you cannot take care of the top tier, as Rayansh was telling, that you cannot take care of everything through AI. Human touch is still required, but ethically, now I was a little skeptic. I was like, the moment I automate sales, I know everyone was telling me a lot of jobs would go, because I know I have a very clear vision of where I want to take it. I want to automate everything, at least till level that I can, not the top tier one, but below that I want to automate a lot of it. And now ethically, I am at a kind of a distribution that if I build it, I know that a lot of jobs can be taken off, because it's going to automate everything. Maybe the people who know how to operate it will get jobs, but the ones who are maybe talking customer care or anything like that, those jobs will be gone. And ethically, I am at a kind of like a question, that should I do it? Is it ethically right in contrast to my values and morals? So if you I want everyone's take on this, because I need to build it.
Right. So my take on it is that AI cannot fully replace sales, or right, you cannot fully automate it. And I'm being very real. There are YC companies who are trying to do that and they're failing at it miserably. You can automate lead generation, you can automate outreach, but not sales. Sales is core thing essentially. Yeah, pretty much it. And it's not going to end up taking jobs, I'm pretty sure. काफी टाइम से मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि jobs ले जा रही है, but नहीं होता. It's the people who know how to use AI end up taking the jobs of people who do not use AI, right? That's how it's going to be later on as well.
Okay. I think it's a really interesting question, right? Because it's a nuanced question. It's about your personal values / ethics / morality and what makes sense to you. I think in answering the question, there's two ways to go about it. One is to think about what is my personal take on this. If I feel like this is going to take away jobs and that element is really important to me, I'm going to operate on those grounds. If I alter my perspective a little bit and I think about what's the point of me starting this business, it's because I want to build a business, I think I can create a good product, I think it will help the larger ecosystem over time, I think it will become better over time, I think it will lead to value for my shareholders or for the people who've invested in it more generally. I would think about the perspective of the question. What is the lens that you're arriving at? I think Alok said something really interesting a little while ago, which was history is written by the people who are writing that history, right? It's called, in common parlance in legal history, it's called victor's justice. Essentially, that's the whole context. That's the lens you're thinking about. From my perspective, what seems to make most sense to someone? What might be most important is the numbers associated with it, the profit that it could generate, the value it could add, the benefits it could create. To someone else, the human element of it, of course not getting into whether AI will replace human jobs or not, but to someone that human element could be the most important element of this. And so I think this kind of really goes into what your personal values and your morals and your ethics or whatever you want to name it, where does that lie? And if you feel like you can build a product that has greater good attached to it, I would think about how do I amplify that greater good while reducing the potential for what I perceive as perhaps harm, and then go about it. But this is like a very personal sort of thought on it.
First of all, how are we looking at AI? I still look at it as yet another tool to help us get ahead as humans. Do you use phones? Does your sales team use phones? Do they use emails? Do they use Spot or Salesforce, any of the other tools to generate sales for themselves? if you took all that away, how many people would you hire versus how many you have today? You would need to hire more people, right? A lot of work that gets done through these technology. AI is yet another, right? By using that, you will be able to reduce the number of salespeople you have. But you may be able to, like she's saying, you end up creating more value within your business, and that value can then be used to create jobs elsewhere. Maybe in your production line, because you're selling more, you need to produce more, so you need more factory workers and things like those. So I don't think this is an ethical dilemma at all, right? Otherwise, we'll all stop using all technology.
I think I strongly agree with other panel members. I perceive AI as an enabler, not as something which is going to replace us completely. And to be honest, because I'm on this side of the fence where we are building AI, I know where it doesn't work, and there are a lot of cases it doesn't work. So it's not completely take away what humans can do, right? While other people were talking about it, while you were describing your question, I think in sales, human touch is super important. It can't be completely automated. What would you respond to better? A human talking to you, would you trust that more, or would you trust a completely automated process where end of the day you get an email and a message? So I think some part of the process always will have humans, and that can't be taken away. Can you optimize? Maybe, yes. And like Deanj said, I think it's a general thing that people need to upskill. I don't think everybody was okay with using computer systems, right? But when they came in, I mean, nobody was okay using phones. Today our grandparents use it. So I think upskilling is a very important part, and the power will be with those who learn new technology, but it's not going to completely replace what humans can.
Okay, other questions? Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Utesh. Firstly, I would like to thank all the panel members to spending their precious time with us. My question mostly relates with Alok sir, I believe. So, what do you think is the future of AI generalists?
Of?
AI generalists.
Journalists or generalists?
Media writers.
AI generalists.
Generalists.
Generalists. What is an AI generalist?
So, I believe AI generalist is the jack of all AI tools.
Which all of us are. I'm sure everybody here is using multiple AI tools. So I'm not sure what exactly. As users, people will use lots of different AI applications. They will come in different forms. They will have different names. Every year there is a new terminology. So I don't know which one to use. Right? This year flavor is agents. Next year will be something else. But we will use, all of us will use multiple AI tools.
But what's your take as a profession? AI journalism as a profession?
I think you will have to be specific in which part of your, which is why I showed you the stack. You'll have to be clear on which part of that stack you want to work in and what specifically you want to offer as your skills. And there is opportunity for non-tech people. There is a lot of opportunity for non-tech people, whether in terms of data enrichment, for bringing in the perspective, all the various things we talked about, the non-scientific, the subjective areas, or in terms of understanding user applications. That is one big area now people are focusing on. While all these powerful AI models are built, but not many people are using it, not from an enterprise perspective. Why are they not using it? Because these models don't understand what their customers want, right? So they have to start looking at how does the finance function work in an FMCG company versus how does it work in an automobile company. It requires very specialized thinking and training, which a technical person does not have because that's not their role, right? So you need to start. So almost everybody will be part of this ecosystem now, going forward.
Are you?
Only 1%. Only 1%, otherwise we'll not have that. Yeah.
Where do we draw the line? Even if we are aware about the ethics, where do we draw the line about culture appropriation and thing? We can't get it all right. So where do we draw the line?
Who wants to take this? It's a good question.
I can have it. Right.
Yeah, the lawyer. Where do you draw the line, lawyer?
They draw and move the lines as they please.
Yeah, the scientists will make it now.
The scientists will push the envelope and the lawyers will push back
where
on
do they
it.
draw the line?
मैं खड़ा हूँ वहाँ से line शुरू करो.
Tell me more about what you mean when you say where do we draw the line on cultural appropriation.
You can't get cultural appropriation all right. Someone has different perspective, someone has different perspective on the same thing. But you can't get it all right. Where do we draw the line in that?
I would ask you the question, why do we need to draw the line?
It can be controversial, and if someone's sentiment get hurt. So
Is that why we're building technology? We don't want somebody to feel sad or hurt. That's not why we're building technology. Look, I think you ask a really good question, which is how do we think about this issue, and how do we ensure representation exists? The reason that question is important is not because if it doesn't exist, someone will feel sad. The reason that question is important is because the world is richer for it if we have a representative ecosystem. The world helps you make better decisions when you have access to multiple perspectives of thought. The diversity is important not because its absence makes someone feel left out only, but it's also important because without that diversity, we make bad decisions. So I love that loan example, but I'm going to go with the job example for a second. Did you know that before AI conversations in rooms like these were mainstream, there were many companies that were already using AI for multiple reasons, including for deciding who were the cool candidates they should pick up for the interview process. Their use of AI was limited only to shortlisting or sifting through the tens of millions of whatevers of CVs that existed with them. There's a very prominent e-commerce company that decided to do this some 20 years ago, and they said, we want to hire the best possible people for XYZ job. And here is our hiring pattern from the last 10 years. We've hired all these amazing people. We have so many other people who are interested in our jobs. Based on our hiring patterns of the last 10 years, can you tell me who the top, for the sake of this conversation, top 10 candidates would be? That's not what they said, but for the sake of this conversation. And what they noticed was, all of those candidates were male. Every single one of them. Not because they taught the AI system to be sexist, not because they taught the AI system they should only prefer male candidates, but because the past 10 years hiring pattern was such that mostly male candidates ended up being hired for a lot of these jobs. And so the AI tool automatically started downgrading people from women-only colleges. It automatically started disregarding women candidates for those specific jobs, regardless of what their merit situation was. Now in this environment, when you think about who got that job ultimately, essentially people got excluded because the AI struggled with the exact same bias that humans had struggled with, right? And so your question, to go back on the cultural appropriation piece, the importance of having diversity and representation in data sets, and therefore training your AI models to be as inclusive as possible, is important because if we don't do it, somebody will be left behind. It has nothing to do with sensitivity, it has nothing to do with controversy, and everything to do with the fact that we want to build an inclusive environment, an inclusive ecosystem at large. And culture in and of itself is such a subjective topic that humans can't get it right. How will we teach the technology to quote unquote get it right? Maybe that's because there isn't a right on something like culture. There is only inclusion. There's only a multiplicity of contexts and a multiplicity of aspects, as a result of which we can make sure that you, the human being who's reading those results, can make the best decisions for yourself. Does that help answer the question? Yeah? Yeah, please.
I think Kriti talked about inclusivity, which is what we want. And she covered everything. I will just leave you with an example. You don't have to draw the line. Because if we talk about cultural appropriation, I'll give you an example. You take any model, ask it to give you an image of a wedding. Like Alok sir said, it is heavily biased towards the West. It will give you a white wedding. Do you need that? Do you want to draw a line? You can just maybe we can teach our systems to ask, what kind of wedding do you want to be created in there? Right? Then we don't have to talk them.
Yeah.
I just want to ask both Shruti and Kriti that we spoke about bias, and a lot of that bias is unconscious bias. We don't know that we are biased towards things. So when we say that as people who are labeling data or as people who are working with AI, that we have to be more conscious, that's at one level. It's a lifelong process. As companies, as countries, as organizations that work for it, what are the structures that are put in place that, like, we're not depending only on individuals to teach ourselves to get out of that bias, but the fact that there are specific structures in place to make sure that the bias is caught and it's not sort of taken forward.
So I think from what are the technical standards that get put in place, Shruti will of course be the best person to answer that question. I think if I had to condense it down into something super basic, it's a system of checks and balances that gets created. Your goal is to test and evaluate and question and retest and re-evaluate and re-question at every single stage. So aside from all the technological measures that get put in place, there are multiple different things that different sets of organizations will end up doing. Some will have different layers of testing. So you've got your first layer, and then it kind of gets re-upped to the second layer, then it gets re-upped to the third layer, and so on and so forth. And I think then on top of that, you have, for lack of a better word, leadership level positions that get created in organizations to ensure that guardrails get put in place from a company level. What are the things that we want to really be conscious of? We want to make sure that our system does not, for example, throw up black Nazis. We want to be conscious that our system does not assume that all runners are white males standing in a super green environment. We want to make sure that we're not being biased on the basis of caste, creed, color, sex, gender, the whole 9 yards. Right? We're going to try and put in guardrails. Now those guardrails are never going to be 100% foolproof, purely because the concept of bias is so subjective in the first place. But you can try and reduce the odds, and you try and reduce the odds through a combination of technical and organizational measures such as this. And I would go a step further, and I would say as users, I think we have a really high level of responsibility on this one as well. When I prompt a large language model to give me a certain response, I have to make sure that I'm not letting any unconscious bias creep into my question as well. And if I have unconscious bias that is ultimately creeping into the question, I have to word my question in such a way that in my prompt itself, I'm telling the large language model that, hey, I could have biases, please kind of get rid of those in XYZ ways. For example, I'm looking for examples of the coolest astronauts in the last 10 years. Be sure to give me a representative list of astronauts. Do not limit this to the West. Do not limit this to males. Do not limit this by age, so on and so forth. So I think in addition to the organizational and technical measures that get put in place, as users, I think there's a lot that we can do as well to try and reduce that risk of bias.
Yeah, I think Kriti answered it brilliantly, and she's covered a lot. From an individual technologist perspective, as someone who's not really building AI but working closely with technology, I showed you that slide of questions you should ask. My philosophy is question. Do not be afraid to question. Question, is it fair? Do you think there are any negative impacts of this? You raised a very nice point about having subjective views, especially when it comes to things like bias and fairness. A lot of times what I may, like for skin tone we have a 6-point scale. I may say it's 4, somebody might say it's 3, somebody might say it's 6. A lot of times how in organizations we handle it or how we work in this space is we crowdsource the data and we take an average, or we take like the mean or the median or like maximum voting. So there are different ways to handle it from a technology perspective. And there is a lot of research happening because it's not a solved problem, right? In terms of organizations, again, creating awareness is of utmost importance. I don't think AI specialists or technologists or people who are working, when you're building any simple batch project, you may think about what is bias or fairness, but educating and advocating for it is something which is really helping bring out where the responsibility lies and just highlighting the importance of it. At my organization, we have checklists to do that. So we have checklists at each cycle, each step of the cycle. So when we are ideating, we do a checklist of where do you think can bias creep in, where do you think, how can it be unsafe, can this technology be used negatively? It's not that I will stop building if it can be used negatively, but I will be more mindful, and if there is something during the development process I can do to eliminate that harm, I can do it. If I'm not aware of it, I cannot work to solve for it. So I think doing that check at every stage is really helpful. And then I think it's a continuous process. You get a feedback, you work on improving it. So that's how it goes.
And I just add that just to make sure that when folks are making decisions, those rooms are filled with a wide variety of life experiences that can make a lot of difference. I don't know if you've read this study back from when Gillette decided to launch its product in India for the first time, and it tanked massively. And it tanked, and they led studies at Harvard and Stanford and God knows where else, and they made some changes to the design. We'll put one additional blade here, and we'll do this and that and the other. They launched a revamped product in India, massively tanked again, until someone physically came to India and found out through their research that the rural parts of the country, which are the most prominent parts of the country, where your consumer base is going to be, they don't have running water. And so they can't clean, their Gillette blade doesn't get clean inside their mug in which they've got pani and they're going chuk 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 like this. It doesn't get clean, therefore it's not a good enough product for them to use. So having the correct people in those decision making rooms can make a lot of differences, and that includes the developers.
And just to add one line, currently maximum investment in building AI models is actually going into the data layer. So I don't know if you've heard of a company called Scale AI. They just work on data. And they were recently semi-acquired by Meta for $15 billion with a total valuation of $20 billion. Just a data company. And there are many ways of doing it. So there is reinforcement learning on data and human-based reinforcement learning. So the maximum effort right now is going into improving the quality of data. Earlier it was all about quantity of data. So you had bigger and bigger models, so many billion parameters, so on. But now nobody's talking about scale, but they're talking more about quality.
Okay, maybe this side.
This side, yeah. He's been, yeah.
Okay, so my question was, since we've talked about how we as users can correct the biases that exist in LLMs, would a better way to tackle the problem be creating the data sets in fact that are more representative of the population, and if so, is that a viable option going forward for us as students to build in fact?
So synthetic data is a very viable proposition. A lot of work. In fact, there is a new problem. We have run out of human-generated data to train AI models. Almost everything which was generated has been used to train the models, and therefore to train further, you need to create more data. So a lot of synthetic data is currently being generated, and that's a huge, I think it's a huge opportunity for Indians, because we can generate synthetic data at a much lower cost than US can.
Not to mention it's privacy preserving as well, because it's synthetic data. It is not associated with individual human beings, so it's a great idea.
But then there will be a problem, right? When you're actually going to production,
Yes.
we should be able to differentiate.
It has to be able to correct for that.
Which is synthetic and which is not. Yeah.
Now they have norms for that.
Yeah.
But TLDR, yes, you should definitely work in the data space. I think, like Alok mentioned, it was all about quantity and not really about quality. Nobody really cared what data is going in. So you really need people working to build representative data sets, and synthetic data is one way of doing it. But working, I think there's some amount of real data also required to know the gap between synthetic and real data. So that doesn't completely go on. So yes, if you have ideas, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a big field. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, lady there.
Okay.
As a practicing lawyer, I'm quite concerned how are we going to tackle issues with AI challenges in copyright issues and intellectual property rights. I understand ethics, but our work comes when it goes unethical. And when till the law is being formed, how do we tackle all this?
Fantastic question. We can have a whole other conversation on this. I think the distinction is that the copyright issue, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with ethics. It has to do with legal rights to the product, to the end product, right, and attribution associated with it. So India, not a whole lot that's happening on the copyright front right now, but I'm sure you're following everything that's going on in the US on the copyright front. And the question there really is who benefits, right? That is the underlying question. It's not one of what is right or what is wrong, morally or ethically speaking. The question is who gets to earn the money out of this one? Can people utilize information without paying for it? And copyright related issues have nothing to do with personal data. They have nothing to do with privacy. It has everything to do with monetizable information that has been created as the result of a human being using their mind. Now, whether that's copyright or it's trademark or it's patents or whatever it is intellectual property, right? And so I think there is a whole conversation that we should definitely have, perhaps over chai, on what we're going to do on this front. I think in the Indian context right now, this is still very much a work in progress. And in fact, there's a lot of policy discussions happening on this subject right now between the DPIIT, which is a regulatory department within the government, as well as a whole lot of think tanks who are thinking about copyright issues, particularly within the Indian context. Because again, all the discussions on copyright that are happening right now are either in the EU context or in the US context, with a very, for lack of a better word, Western approach attached to it. India has not necessarily taken similar approaches at every juncture in the past on copyright enforcement, and so it will be interesting to see how we decide to regulate this space, if at all. Under existing copyright law, I think there's enough to play around with that language and not have to kind of stress on that front particularly, but let's talk more over chai.
Include me. Sony's struggling with it.
I believe you.
Following what she said, yeah.
Let him complete.
Sure. So, following what she said, a recent thing that happened was a group of artisans were actually, they sued a company because their work was used, their IP was used in training a data set, right? So, something that would solve this problem would be another company that is actually being created right now, which goes inside of the data of this AI company and gives you कि कहाँ पर ये सब train हुआ है. So this is being created and this is an actual issue, I would say. And I think India mein copyright infringement is going to come very, very soon if it's not already there. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, one last question and then let's chat over tea.
Chai.
Right?
I have a question for Shruti ma'am. You told us about your experience working with face recognition models, like with biased data. So, like being a beginner and from an outsider, it seems like it's a very fundamental issue because like we have grown up learning that your model could be as good as the data that's fed into it. So, could you like tell us about how it's mitigated if the only data set that you have is in fact biased?
How can it be mitigated? Well, what you've said is, I think when I was starting out, now when you ask this question or we talk about face recognition and bias, it seems very obvious. I don't think it was this obvious 5 years back. And actually, I'll tell you an example here. When I started my research, we started asking this question that humans are also biased. Are humans also biased to facial recognition? And the simple answer is yes. Do you recognize Asian faces as well as you can recognize Indian faces? No. So we as humans are also not able to do that task well. And there are studies which show that is because our exposure to that is limited. Like we see more Indian faces than I see any other ancestry or ethnic group. And there's a term for this which is called in-group bias, which is heavily studied. So now it does seem very obvious. It wasn't obvious for how humans perform, and it was definitely not very obvious for how machines will do when they don't have access to this kind of data. To answer your question, if we can mitigate this without having access to a diverse set, no. We need, even if it's a small set, there are many techniques. So even if my data, if my model is trained on, say, 2 million images, which do not have Indian images, but maybe more Western images, even if I have a small set of, say, 10,000 images or 5,000 images, there's a technique, the most basic technique called fine-tuning. I can use that to mitigate this bias that my model may have. So there's a lot of research on how I can adapt my model, even if it hasn't seen that large amount of data coming from a diverse set, even with a small set of data. But I don't think it's possible to mitigate that without having some amount of diverse data.
Can I add something?
Yes. You have a follow-up, go ahead, ask.
Actually, the follow-up question is, like you said that the only way to mitigate that is to have a larger data set. And as Alok sir said, like one of the way to have a larger data set is to use synthetic data. So wouldn't the model that's generating the synthetic data, how do we ensure that that's not biased as well?
The only way to mitigate it is to have access to more diverse and representative data, not necessarily a large amount of data.
Join a startup. This is a good problem to solve.
It is. And I think the next big problem in general where people are working on is how to build good models with small amount of data which don't need millions and millions of images, which is a very big open problem. But it's important to have, more than the quantity, it's more important to have a diverse set. So I wouldn't say that you need a very large set. You need diversity in your data, which is very important. And in terms of synthetic data, I think, like Alok sir said, there are a lot of open questions. People are still exploring, at least in the vision space, how best we can use synthetic data. There are some startups which actually just create this data, help in annotations and give it. Unlike textual data, visual data, especially human data, we have this challenge of annotations. It's not very clear which skin tone does the synthetic data image have, because there's no ground truth. You can't go back and ask the person what your ancestry is. So you don't really have the real truth, or what your pronoun is, or what your age is. It is just we as annotators or experts could crowdsource that information. But yeah, synthetic data, there is a lot of scope, but there are a lot of open questions also from where I see it.
So something that I just want to add on is that us as common people, we will not have as much control over data as the big global international companies, right? So simple example over here would be, have you ever used Cursor before? Yeah, Cursor is $20. Cursor pays $10 to OpenAI because they use their API keys. OpenAI in turn pays $5 to NVIDIA's GPUs. So if you think about it, we're essentially funding the entire AI supply chain. And like Sir said, the data that we currently have is essentially over, khatam hai. Ab synthetic data pe hoga ya fir we'll have to create more data. So yeah, good question and very questionable. People will have to work on it eventually.
And diverse data sets are a function of quality, not necessarily quantity. That's the only limited piece. It's not necessarily about, like Shruti said, it's not about how many data points do you have, but how representative they are of as wide an ecosystem as possible. So it's qualitative in that sense, not really quantitative necessarily at all points in time.
And the new challenge we've been dealing with is consent of whose images we are using. I think that becomes more challenging, but yeah, diversity is something.
Funny thing is that MemoDAG is essentially solving this problem. We're trying to build qualitativeness using an AI model, which is very, very difficult. So if anyone over here is interested, we can connect and we can build it together.
But just one last thing I will share. It's not just, like when we talk about representativeness, it's just not having as many women as possible, as many people of color as possible. It's not just diversity or representation in that sense. AI really needs representative data in all forms. So when I say, I will give you an example to explain this because it's really something which we don't think about when we are collecting or working with data. I was working with a pose estimation model. It was not doing well for females. Yeah, it's not doing well for females because it's not trained on enough data for women. We go back and I try to understand why is it not doing well for women. One way to answer it is there's not enough training data. That's why, like it's skewed. When we started looking at what is causing the problem, it was not just the lack of data coming for women. It was actually a lot of data where there were women, they were wearing skirts. What happens when women are wearing skirts? It's a pose estimation problem. So what happens is you have to mark key points. So on the face there'll be like 40 points, elbows, shoulders, knee, ankle. In skirts you can't see the knee. In skirts you can't see the ankle. So the model is failing. So what you really need is specific data for women. So that's where representativeness comes in. And that's where you need to study why your model isn't doing well. It doesn't stop at, it's not doing well for women. Why is it not doing well? Is it an outfit? Is it makeup? Is it something else? So that's important to us, I think.
Okay, on that note, I'm sure you are dying to ask many more questions, we certainly have tea and maybe some refreshments outside where we convened earlier, and the panelists will be around for you to ask those questions, so please stay for it. So I would suggest we wrap up, okay?
Yep.
I'm not very enthusiastic. I thought you would be. I mean, I thought it was Saturday evening. First, let's thank all the panelists and of course, can I ask Gayatri to start with Alok?
Honoring.
Yeah. And
so is it a bouquet?
Bouquet and a book, yeah. Renu, if you can make your way here.
So we had a stage breaking performance.